Warning. I chain smoke and I say fuck a lot. But I accept myself for the way I am. I accept you too. Viewer discretion advised.
This is Aldous Huxley. A searing social critic, Mr. Huxley, 27 years ago, wrote Brave New World, a novel that predicted that someday the entire world would live under a frightful dictatorship. Today, Mr. Huxley says that his fictional world of horror is probably just around the corner for all of us.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
C60 in oil is a powerful antioxidant that moves through the body like a magnet to attract and neutralize free radicals. Gotta get rid of those radicals. C60 can slow down aging and reduce cell damage. It can also improve the immune system and reduce inflammation naturally. And I got extra virgin olive oil. Not bad. If you're interested, check out my link in the description. Nutty.
Now, back to our show.
Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World in 1931. It was published in 1932. And his brother, Sir Julian Huxley, was an evolutionary biologist, eugenicist, and internationalist. In 1959, he received a special award of the Lasker Foundation in the category Planned Parenthood, World Population. Huxley was a prominent member of the British Eugenics Society, and he was president from 1959 to 1962. In 1957, Julian Huxley coined the term transhumanism for the view that humans should better themselves through science and technology, possibly including eugenics, but also importantly the improvement of the social environment.
Geneticist Julian Huxley said that since eugenicists had founded the environmental and conservationist movements, these movements should be used as vehicles in forming a world government. He helped to create the World Wildlife Fund with Bilderberg founder Prince Bernhard and Prince Philip of Great Britain. It was Philip who made the remarkable comment to Deutsche Presse-Agentur, quote, "In the event that I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus, in order to contribute something to solve overpopulation." Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, is a Bilderberg member, a Freemason, and a former director of the World Wildlife Fund. Huxley's brother, Aldous, lectured at Berkeley in 1962 and admitted that his iconic book, Brave New World, was not based on fiction, but on the research and planning that actually was underway. The book paints a gloomy picture of a future society in which entire populations are genetically engineered test tube humans, and the greatest insult would be, "Who was your mother?" In his lecture, Aldous Huxley added, quote,
"The scientific dictatorships of the future, and I think there are going to be scientific dictatorships in many parts of the world, will be probably a good deal nearer to the Brave New World pattern than to the 1984 pattern, not because of any humanitarian qualms in the scientific dictators, but simply because the Brave New World pattern is probably a good deal more efficient than the other.
If you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they are living, the state of servitude, the state of being, it seems to me
the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy, who have always existed and presumably always will exist, to get people actually to love their servitude.
These methods combine methods of terror with methods of acceptance. There are various other methods that one can think of.
There is, for example, the pharmacological method. You can imagine a euphoric which would make people thoroughly happy even in the most abominable circumstances.
These things are possible.
Mr. Huxley, right off the bat, let me ask you this. As you see it, who and what are the enemies of freedom here in the United States?
Well, I don't think you can say who in the United States. I don't think there are any sinister persons deliberately trying to rob people of their freedom. But I do think, first of all, that there are a number of impersonal forces which are pushing in the direction of less and less freedom. And I also think that there are a number of technological devices which anybody who wishes to use can use to accelerate this process of going away from freedom, of imposing control.
Well, what are these forces and these devices, Mr. Huxley?
Is not exceedingly important in the United States at the present time, though very important in other countries. This is the force which in general terms can be called overpopulation, the mounting pressure of population pressing upon existing resources.
Well, why should overpopulation work to diminish our freedoms?
Well, in a number of ways. I mean, the experts in the field, like Harrison Brown, for example, pointed out that in the underdeveloped countries, actually the standard of living is at present falling, that people have less to eat and less goods per capita than they had 50 years ago. And as the position of these countries, the economic position, becomes more and more precarious, obviously the central government has to take over more and more responsibility for keeping the ship of state on an even keel. And then, of course, you're likely to get social unrest under such conditions, with again an intervention of the central government. So that I think one sees here a pattern which seems to be pushing very strongly towards a totalitarian regime. And unfortunately, as in all these underdeveloped countries, the only highly organized political party is the Communist Party, it looks rather as though they will be the heirs to this unfortunate process.
And speaking of environmentalism and overpopulation, Jacques Cousteau had this to say.
In November 1991, Jacques Cousteau wrote in the UNESCO Courier, quote, "In order to stabilize world population, we must eliminate 350,000 people per day. It is a horrible thing to say, but it's just as bad not to say it."
And there's also Dr. Eric Pianka.
A chilling viewpoint on the eugenics movement came from Dr. Eric Pianka of the University of Texas Biology Department, who recently received a Texas Academy of Science Award. He took advantage of the occasion to say in his speech that the AIDS epidemic was no good because it was too slow. He instead praised the Ebola virus because it would kill 90% of the world's population much more quickly. For this mad opinion, Pianka received a sustained standing ovation from the audience, which contained many other scientists. Pianka also praised China as the leading world superpower, quote, "because they have a police state and they are able to force people to stop reproducing."
Why would the Earth be better off if 90% of us were dead?
I didn't say 90%, but there are too many of us on this Earth.
Well, he did say 90%.
Just sit and think about it. How long ago was it we passed 6 billion? We're now almost at 6.5. Another 5 years will be 7. All we can hope for is the AIDS epidemic kills a lot of Africans. They've all got it. Or even better, that Ebola mutates to be airborne and there's a massive epidemic around the planet, killing 90% of us and knocking us back to a population density that's reasonable.
Yeah, he went there.
I think this kind of the dictatorship of the future, I think, will be very unlike the dictatorships which we've been familiar with in the immediate past. Now, I think what is going to happen in the future is the dictators will find, as the old saying goes, that you can do everything with bayonets except sit on them. That if you want to preserve your power indefinitely, you have to get the consent of the ruled. And this they will do partly by drugs, as I foresaw in Brave New World, partly by these new techniques of propaganda. They will do it by bypassing the sort of rational side of man and appealing to his subconscious and his deeper emotions and his physiology even, and so making him actually love his slavery. I mean, I think this is the danger, that actually people may be in some ways happy under the new regime, but they will be happy in a situation where they oughtn't to be happy.
What he's saying is exactly what Edward Bernays was saying. If one can design propaganda or psychological operations that bypass the conscious and rational faculties of the individual, targeting instead suppressed emotions and hidden desires, it is possible to move people to adopt beliefs and behaviors without them being aware of the underlying motivations leading them on. Men are largely actuated by motives which they conceal from themselves. It is evident that the successful propagandist must understand the true motives and not be content to accept the reasons which men give for what they do. They become highly susceptible to psychological operations designed to target suppressed or unconscious desires and emotions. In modern day, there appear to be forces operating through the mainstream media and popular culture which are attempting to increase the individual's proclivity to engage in certain types of group identification, namely identifications that divided the population into conflicting groups. This phenomenon has potentially dire consequences for both the stability and freedom of a society, as it allows those in power to institute the age-old tactic of divide and conquer.
The danger, it seems to me, in a democracy is this. I mean, what does a democracy depend on? A democracy depends on the individual voter making an intelligent and rational choice for what he regards as his enlightened self-interest in any given circumstance. But what these people are doing, I mean, what both for their particular purposes, for selling goods, and the dictatorial propagandists are doing, is to try to bypass the rational side of man and to appeal directly to these unconscious forces below the surface, so that you are in a way making nonsense of the whole democratic procedure, which is based on conscious choice on rational ground.
They've been fucking with our minds for years, and he who owns the media owns the world's perception, but it doesn't mean it's real. Fucking stoned.